Episode 14. Although I was sending emails to my wife twice a week on a Tuesday and a Friday, I would go 2 or 3 weeks not hearing nothing back from her. I'd get an email and she would just talk about mundane things, nothing about my case. So I wrote her a letter because she was going to organise an advocate. And eventually I get a letter off her and she tells me that she spoke to the advocate and he says I will be here for at least another 2 years. That destroyed me. I thought, I can't do this for another 2 years. It was just, and everything was just piling back on top of me. And also I discovered, because the advocate that she was talking to lived in Goa, which is 1,000 miles away from Delhi, she also told me a little while later that she couldn't use this advocate because it wasn't worth him travelling all the way to to Delhi. I understood that, and she said that I should try and sort an advocate out myself. How I'm going to do this with no money? Well, who knows? Anyway, that's how it was, and that in itself put me in a deep depression. Just understand, I still loved my wife at this point, you know. She was my only contact on the outside. There was nobody else. And that contact regarding my case had finished. Anyway, the beginning of October, I went round to see Mick in the hospital. And I said, Mick, I feel strange today. He said, what's the matter? I said, I'm struggling to breathe, I said, my breath is like short breaths. And he said, I think you should go back and just lie down for a while. So I did. And come about 2 o'clock, I had hardly any breath in my body. I spoke to the servitor and said, I need to go to the hospital to see a doctor. I said, something's not right. He said, okay. This guy had to help me to the hospital because I had a job to walk. Got to the hospital. The doctor examined me and he said, you are having pneumonia. You must go to the outside hospital now. What? Pneumonia? What's this all about? Anyway, they organised an ambulance and I was taken back to Safford Young Hospital. I had 3 armed guards and we walked through the hospital up in a lift to somewhere down this long corridor. We were walking down this corridor, right? And this is the truth. There was a rat walking up the corridor. It wasn't shuffling, it was strolling up the corridor. And I thought, oh, this is bad, like. Anyway, we get to the end of this corridor, and on the right-hand side, there was 2 big glass windows and a doorway, an entrance. And inside was 6 beds. It was a mixture of men and women in this room. And there was 2 people to each bed. I had the first bed just as you walked in on the right-hand side, I had the first bed that I shared with another guy. And outside, just outside in the corridor was a seat, and this is where these 3 armed guards sat. At night, I would have 2 armed guards. They gave me injections, and for 2 nights and 2 days, I lived on 2 cups of tea. In India, people bring their food in to feed the patients. You don't get dinners or anything like that. And people would come in, sit around, could be 6 or 7 sitting around one bed, and they'd pull out all the little tins of food and whatever, and people would get fed. Anyway, this one morning, I got up and went to go to the toilet, which was by the side of where the guards were sat. And it must have took me 2 or 3 minutes to walk a matter of 3 meters or more. I could hardly walk, could hardly breathe. Came back, got onto the bed, and this guy that I was with, he wasn't moving like. Anyway, somebody came, a doctor came, they examined him and he was dead. So they took him away. And my next thought was, I've got the bed to myself. It's how your mindset changes. Believe you me, that's all I can say. I mean, I didn't know this guy. All I knew was I had the bed to myself, or so I thought. That night, when the guards changed over, there was 3 guards, and then about 10, 11 o'clock at night, I heard a noise. And one of the guards had took his boots off and climbed onto the bed. So that night, I slept with a guard. This went on for like a week. One of the guards on the daytime, he was a Kashmiri and he spoke English, a bit of English. And I'd say, biddy, please give me a biddy. So he would slip me a biddy and a box of matches, and I would nip into the toilet and I'd have a smoke. And it nearly killed me. That's all I can say. I thought, I can't do this. And went back to my bed. And then a woman from one of the beds came over. I didn't know this woman. She was somebody that had come in and brought food for somebody and give me an apple. Oh man, I munched on this apple so slowly, must have took me 20 minutes to eat it. But it was delicious. It was delicious. Anyway, I'd been there a week and they sent me back to Tihar. When I got there, I went to my cell and the servitor said, no, you must go to the hospital. I said, okay. I was feeling like so rough, you wouldn't believe it. And as it turned out, while I was there, I was getting these injections twice a day. On my last day, they couldn't find veins in my arms to pump this stuff through. They were just really struggling, and the last time they got it in, Christ, the pain was unbelievable. Anyway, I'm at the hospital, and there is one big room with about 20 or 30 beds in where people go to recuperate. So I'm there on the bed, and then in the evening time, this nurse come. There was one nurse there and servitors, and she started to give me another injection. She was looking for veins, and I looked at her and I said, this stuff that you're injecting, I said, they were giving me this at the hospital. I said, why couldn't I have just come here in the first place? And she said, they sent you out to die. And I said, all right. They said, and she said, and she sort of come close and she said, people don't die in TR. They always die on the way to the hospital or in the hospital. Fucking hell. So, the next day, the servitor of the hospital came to see me. And his name, his real name, is Christophe Delias, Frenchman. Chris. The guy's an angel. He's an angel. He'd been in Tihar a few years and he was serving a 10-year sentence for a kilo of charas. And he would bring me tea, and then a bit later on he brought me hot milk. He gave me a steel glass, which stayed with me until the end of my time in Tihar. And after a couple of days, I felt well enough to get up, and that's all I can say. And I staggered over to Mick's cell, and Chris was there. And he said, Steve, you want to smoke some charas? I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. So Chris made this biddy, chai party, chewing tobacco and charas. And I smoked it. And then he had to help me back to the hospital. I found out that he actually had a bed in this room. It was part of his perk, if you like, because he was the servitor of the hospital, and that meant that in the morning he would make sure that everybody got their chai. If they needed anything, he would do it for them. The guy was like unbelievable. And at that time in Tihar, in Central Jail number 4, one of the wards was called Vipassana. And Chris he used to go there to do these courses. They were meditation courses. It's well known across the world. You've only got to put in Vipassana and you'll understand what I'm talking about. And he said to me this day, Steve, there's a 10-day course coming up in the next couple of weeks. He said, why don't you apply for it? I said, yeah, okay. He said, I tell you what, he said, I'll sort it out for you. And he said, all you've got to do is to be ready on the day. Which he did. And on the appointed day, by then, I was over the pneumonia. And I went to Central Jail 4 for 10 days to do this Vipassana. And it was a trip. Next time.